In a world transitioning from unipolarity to multipolarity, where geopolitical dynamics are increasingly shaped by a complex interplay of political, economic, and societal forces, a new dimension emerges: the digital order. As we navigate this landscape, three plausible scenarios unfold. Firstly, a technology Cold War looms, with American and Chinese leaders aligning tech companies, fragmenting the digital realm. Alternatively, a globalized digital order may emerge if tech giants resist political alignment, competing globally while maintaining digital sovereignty. Most intriguing is the prospect of a techno-polar order where tech companies, fueled by artificial intelligence, become central players in global geopolitics. The outcome hinges on how these actors wield their unprecedented power, raising critical questions about the future balance between governments and technology in shaping the world and preserving individual freedoms. Welcome to a new era where the digital frontier converges with geopolitical realities, reshaping the very fabric of our interconnected existence. Who runs the world? Is a question that resonates across various spheres of society, igniting discussions about power, influence, and the intricate dynamics shaping our global landscape. In attempting to unravel the complexity of this question, we must explore political, economic, and societal dimensions, recognizing that power is distributed across a multifaceted spectrum. Politically, the world is divided into sovereign nations, each governed by its own set of leaders, laws, and institutions. The global stage witnesses the influence of major political players such as the United States, China, Russia, and the European Union, among others. These entities wield significant power in international relations, shaping diplomatic alliances, economic policies, and responses to global challenges. Simultaneously, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and international bodies like the United Nations play pivotal roles in advocating for human rights, humanitarian aid, and environmental sustainability. The question of who runs the world on a political level involves a complex interplay of nation-states, international organizations, and grassroots movements advocating for change.
Economically, the global landscape is shaped by powerful corporations and financial institutions. Multinational companies, often with revenues surpassing the GDP of many countries, exert substantial influence over markets, trade, and economic policies. Tech giants like Amazon, Apple, and Google impact not only commerce but also the flow of information and societal dynamics.
Financial institutions, including central banks and investment firms, hold sway over monetary policies and global markets. The decisions of these entities can have far-reaching consequences, influencing economic stability, currency values, and wealth distribution. The dynamics of economic power are further underscored by global trade agreements and economic blocs that shape the flow of goods and services. Societally, power is distributed among a myriad of actors, including cultural influencers, activists, and ordinary citizens. Social media platforms provide a democratized space for individuals to voice their opinions, mobilize movements, and challenge established norms. The influence of popular culture, from Hollywood movies to music and fashion, contributes to shaping societal values and perceptions. In recent years, social movements advocating for social justice, environmental sustainability, and equality have gained momentum. The question of who runs the world, from a societal standpoint, encompasses the collective impact of these movements in challenging systemic issues and advocating for change. Grassroots initiatives, community organizations, and individuals committed to social causes all contribute to the broader tapestry of societal influence. Beyond these dimensions, the question of who runs the world also delves into deeper philosophical considerations. Concepts of power, authority, and governance have been explored by political theorists, philosophers, and scholars throughout history. The dynamics of power are often interwoven with questions of morality, justice, and the fundamental structures that govern societies. Examining the historical context, the question has been shaped by colonial legacies, geopolitical shifts, and the ebb and flow of global alliances. The emergence of new powers, the decline of others, and the evolving nature of geopolitics contribute to the ever-changing answer to this complex question.
Moreover, the concept of power extends to the environmental sphere. Discussions around climate change, conservation, and sustainable development highlight the role of nations, corporations, and individuals in determining the fate of the planet. The question of who runs the world in the context of environmental stewardship underscores the need for collective responsibility and global cooperation.
As we navigate the intricate layers of this question, it becomes evident that the world is not solely run by a single entity or group. Instead, power is distributed across a vast and interconnected web of political, economic, and societal actors. The narrative is dynamic, shaped by historical legacies, contemporary challenges, and the collective actions of individuals and institutions. Perhaps, in asking, who runs the world? What we are truly probing is the shared responsibility we all bear in shaping the course of our collective future. It calls for introspection, a recognition of our interconnectedness, and a commitment to fostering a world that reflects the values of justice, equality, and sustainability. In this nuanced exploration, the answer lies not in a singular entity but in the collective agency of a diverse and interconnected global community. If you're over 45, like me, you grew up in a world dominated by two superpowers. The United States and its allies set the rules on one side of the Berlin Wall, while the Soviet Union called the shots on the other. Nearly every other country had to align its political, economic, and security systems with one side or the other. That was a bipolar world. If you're under 45, you came of age after the Soviet Union collapsed. The US became the world's sole superpower, dictating outcomes both through its dominant role in international organizations and also by exerting raw power. That was a unipolar world. About 15 years ago, the world changed again, and it got a lot more complicated. The United States became less interested in being the world's policeman, the architect of global trade, and even the cheerleader of global values. And lots of other countries grew powerful enough to ignore rules they didn't like and, occasionally, to set some themselves. That's the G0 world order I named my media company after and constantly write about, a leaderless world. Three things happened to cause this geopolitical recession, when the global architecture no longer lines up with the underlying balance of power. First, the US didn't bring Russia into the US-led international order. Now a former great power in serious decline, Russia has become extremely angry and sees the US as its primary adversary on the global stage. We can argue about who is most to blame for this, but the fact is, we are where we are. Second, the US did bring China into US-led institutions, but on the presumption that as the Chinese grew more integrated, wealthy, and powerful, they would also become American, i.e., a free market democracy willing to play by the rules without wanting to change them. As it turns out, they're still Chinese, and the US is not ready to accept that.
And third, the US and its allies ignored the tens of millions of their citizens who felt left behind by globalization. After decades of benign neglect, most of these citizens have grown fundamentally mistrustful of their governments and of democracy itself, making their leaders less able or willing to lead.
All the geopolitical crises you see in the headlines every day, over 90% of them trace back directly or indirectly to these three issues. Yet, for better or worse, geopolitical recessions don't last forever. After all, nature abhors a power vacuum. And the coming global order is something very, very different from what we've become used to. Where we are now, we no longer live in a unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar world. Why? We no longer have superpowers, as in, countries that exert global power in every domain. That's right, the US and China are not superpowers today. And no superpowers mean no single global order. Instead, what we have today is multiple world orders, separate but interconnected. First, we have a unipolar security order. The US is the only country that can send soldiers, sailors, and military hardware to every corner of the world. Nobody else comes close. America's role in the security order today is more essential, and indeed more dominant, than it was a decade ago.
China is rapidly growing its military capabilities in Asia, but nowhere else in a significant way.
That's increasingly concerning to America's Indo-Pacific allies, who now rely on the US security umbrella more than before. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has similarly made Europe the most dependent on US-led NATO it has been in decades. Meanwhile, Russia's military has been weakened by the loss of over 200,000 troops and much of its critical materiel in Ukraine, all of which it'll find hard to rebuild in the face of Western sanctions. Yes, China, Russia, and others have nuclear weapons, but actually using them is still suicide. The US is the world's sole security superpower and will remain so for at least the next decade. We also have a multipolar economic order. There, global power is more widely shared. The US has a robust and dynamic economy and is still the world's largest. But military might doesn't allow Washington to set the rules for the global economy. Despite all the talk about a new Cold War, The US and China are far too economically interdependent to decouple from each other. Bilateral trade between the two keeps making new highs, and other countries want access to both American muscle and the Chinese market, soon to become the world's largest. You can't have an economic Cold War if there's no one willing to fight it. Meanwhile, the European Union is the world's largest common market, and it's able to set rules and standards that the Americans, Chinese, and others have to accept as the price of doing business with it. Japan is still a global economic power, if barely. India's economy is growing rapidly, and with it, so is its influence on the global stage. The relative importance of these and other economies will continue to shift over the coming decade, but what's certain is that the global economic order is and will remain a multipolar order. Where we're going so far, I've written about the two world orders we already see, but there's a third, rapidly emerging order where we find the most uncertainty and the greatest changes to the world we know: the digital order. Unlike every other geopolitical order past and present, the dominant actors setting rules and exerting power aren't governments but technology companies. You've heard how NATO weapons, intelligence, and training have helped Ukrainians defend their land. But if Western tech companies hadn't quickly come to the rescue in the early days of the invasion, fending off Russian cyberattacks and allowing Ukrainian leaders to communicate with their soldiers on the front lines, Russia would have knocked Ukraine completely offline within weeks, effectively ending, and winning, the war. I don't think I exaggerate when I say President Zelensky probably wouldn't be in power today if not for tech companies and their power in the new digital age. Tech companies decide whether Donald Trump can speak without filters and in real time to hundreds of millions of people as he runs for president again. Without social media and its ability to mass market conspiracy theories, there was no January 6th insurrection on Capitol Hill, no trucker riots in Ottawa, and no January 8th revolt in Brazil. Tech companies even define our identities. We used to wonder whether human behavior was primarily the result of nature or nurture. No longer. Today, it's nature, nurture, and algorithms. The digital age is becoming a critical determinant of how we live, what we believe in, what we want, and what we're willing to do to get it. That's a staggering amount of power that tech companies have amassed. And it leads to the biggest question for all of us: how will technology companies use their power? The answer depends largely on what they want to be when they grow up. I see three possible scenarios. If American and Chinese political leaders continue to assert themselves ever more forcefully in the digital space, and if the tech companies then line up with their home governments, then we'll end up in a technology Cold War between the US and China. The digital world will be split in two, other countries will be forced to choose sides, and globalization will fragment to a degree unprecedented in the last several decades. If the tech companies stick with global growth strategies, refusing to align with governments and preserving the existing divide between the physical and digital fields of competition, then we'll see a new globalization, a globalized digital order. Tech companies will remain sovereign in the digital space, competing largely with each other for profits and with governments for geopolitical power, much in the same way that major state actors presently jockey for influence in the space where the economic and security orders overlap.
But if the digital space itself becomes the most arena of great power competition, with the power of governments continuing to erode relative to the power of tech companies, then the digital order itself will become the dominant global order. If that happens, we'll have a post-Westphalian world, a techno-polar order dominated by tech companies as the central players in 21st century geopolitics.
All three of these scenarios strike me as wholly plausible. Much depends on how the explosive nature of artificial intelligence drives changes in existing power structures, whether or not governments are able and willing to regulate tech companies, and, most critically, how tech leaders decide they want to use their newfound power. These questions will determine whether we have a brighter future or a world without freedom. In this rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, the convergence of digital power and traditional forces prompts crucial questions about our collective future. Whether we witness a technological Cold War, a globalized digital order, or the emergence of a techno-polar world, the impact on societies, governments, and individual freedoms will be profound. As technology continues to redefine the contours of global influence, the choices made by leaders in both politics and the tech industry will determine the path ahead. This is a pivotal moment where the dynamics of power, shaped by artificial intelligence and digital prowess, pose challenges and opportunities that demand thoughtful consideration. As we navigate this uncharted territory, the world stands at the intersection of geopolitics and technology, with the choices of today echoing far into the future. In the evolving geopolitical landscape, the question of who runs the world spans political, economic, and societal dimensions. No single entity holds exclusive control. Power is distributed across sovereign nations, influential corporations, tech giants, NGOs, and grassroots movements. Politically, major players like the United States, China, and the European Union shape global relations. Economically, multinational corporations and financial institutions wield influence, while societal power extends to cultural influencers, activists, and ordinary citizens. The emergence of a digital order introduces tech companies as central players, posing scenarios of a technology Cold War, a globalized digital order, or a techno-polar world. The future balance between governments and technology will impact individual freedoms, prompting a nuanced exploration of shared responsibility in shaping our collective future. As we conclude today's exploration into the intricate interplay of geopolitics and technology on our YouTube channel, we find ourselves at the crossroads of a rapidly evolving world. The shift from unipolarity to multipolarity, coupled with the emergence of a digital order, raises pivotal questions about who truly runs the world. Whether we're on the brink of a technology Cold War, witnessing the dawn of a globalized digital order, or stepping into a brave new world dominated by tech companies, one thing remains clear. The choices made by leaders in both politics and the tech industry will shape our collective destiny. Join us on this journey of thoughtful consideration and exploration into the realms of artificial intelligence, digital prowess, and their profound impact on societies, governments, and individual freedoms. As we navigate this uncharted territory, the decisions of today echo far into the future. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful discussions on the convergence of geopolitics and technology. Your engagement fuels the ongoing conversation about our shared future in this dynamically evolving landscape. Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and embrace the possibilities of this ever-changing world.